66 million years ago, in the final days of the Cretaceous period, the world was teetering on the edge of an unimaginable transformation. North America was a land of dense forests, volcanic landscapes, and humid coastal plains. And ruling over this wild, unpredictable world was the legendary Tyrannosaurus rex, the apex predator, the fearsome shadow no creature wanted to encounter. But even a king is not invincible to time. As the Cretaceous drew to its catastrophic end, many species interacted with the T-Rex, some as prey, some as rivals, and others merely as witnesses to the final chapter of this ancient giant's reign. These are the last creatures to ever see a T-Rex alive, moments before one of the greatest extinction events in Earth's history wiped them away forever. Before the asteroid hit, North America was a vibrant, thriving ecosystem. But beneath the lush green canopy, something was changing. The climate was shifting, volcanic activity was rising, and even the plant life was evolving. In this fragile but still living world walked the last generation of T-Rexes. And surrounding them were the creatures who unknowingly shared the final days of Earth's most terrifying predator. If any creature understood what it meant to face a T-Rex, it was the Triceratops. Massive, heavily built, and armed with 3 sharp horns, Triceratops was one of the few dinosaurs capable of standing its ground. Fossils show bite marks from T-Rex on Triceratops bones and even signs of healing, evidence of battles that pushed both species to their limits. In the last days before extinction, herds of Triceratops still traveled across floodplains, grazing on ferns and cycads. They were among the final large herbivores to see a T-Rex alive, sometimes in peaceful coexistence, sometimes locked in deadly combat. The Edmontosaurus, a giant duck-billed dinosaur, lived in large herds and was one of the T-Rex's most abundant food sources. Their numbers were so high that they practically shaped the lifestyle of the T-Rex. T-Rex jaws and Edmontosaurus bones have been found together countless times, some showing clear signs of hunting, others showing scavenging. In the final days, these herds still roamed riverbanks and coastal regions, unaware that they were among the last living creatures to witness the prowling giant that hunted them for millions of years. High above the forests, the skies belonged to Quetzalcoatlus, the largest flying creature that ever lived. With a wingspan reaching 10 to 11 meters, it soared like a living glider over T-Rex territory. Though they rarely interacted directly, these colossal pterosaurs certainly saw T-Rex from above, either circling carcasses, watching territorial battles, or simply surveying the land they both dominated from different realms. In the final days, Quetzalcoatlus was one of the last witnesses to the T-Rex's world, flying over it like a silent observer of history. Small but fiercely territorial, these dome-headed dinosaurs were some of the most bizarre-looking creatures sharing the land with T-Rex. With skulls built like living battering rams, they spent their lives headbutting rivals, defending territory, and foraging in forests. Though they avoided T-Rex whenever possible, these dinosaurs lived close enough to catch glimpses of roaming tyrants in the shadows. Their last memories unknowingly moments before an apocalyptic end. Believe it or not, birds lived alongside the last T-Rexes. From small, crow-sized tree dwellers to ground-running species that resembled early chickens, birds were everywhere in the late Cretaceous. Many of them survived by feeding on insects, seeds, and small animals, making them flexible enough to endure the extinction that wiped out their giant cousins. These birds were some of the final creatures to see T-Rex alive, and ironically, they are the only dinosaurs that survived the catastrophe that in the waterways lurked Deinosuchus, a crocodilian larger than any species alive today. Though rare in the very final fossil layers, smaller late Cretaceous crocodiles and their relatives still inhabited North America during the T-Rex era. These ancient reptiles lived long, slow lives, ambushing prey near rivers and lakes. They likely saw T-Rex when it came to drink, hunt along riverbanks, or scavenge near watery carcasses. These creatures lived their daily lives unaware that an asteroid was already hurtling toward Earth at unimaginable speeds. The skies were still blue, the forests were still green, the rivers still flowed. But time was almost up. In the final weeks, months, or perhaps even mere days, the last T-Rex would have walked across a world still alive, but about to collapse. The creatures above, rivals, prey, neighbors, and survivors, were the final witnesses to the greatest predator ever to walk the earth as the clock ticked down toward the most devastating moment in Earth's history. The world of the T-Rex continued to function, hunting, feeding, nesting, migrating, while the creatures sharing its land carried on with their lives, unaware of the destruction racing toward them from space. But the last days, the last hours, and the final moments before the impact created interactions and encounters that became the final chapter of the T-Rex's story. The Earth was already under stress. Volcanoes in what is now India were spewing ash into the atmosphere. The climate was oscillating, sea levels were shifting, and ecosystems were becoming fragile. But to the creatures living alongside the T-Rex, none of these global patterns mattered. Their world was immediate, finding food, avoiding predators, protecting their young. And in this fading world, the T-Rex still reigned supreme. Yet every king has a sunset. One of the most striking sights during the last days of the T-Rex was its final hunts. Fossil evidence shows that T-Rexes continued hunting right up until the extinction boundary. Their prey, Edmontosaurus, Triceratops, and smaller ceratopsians, were still plentiful. Imagine a massive T-Rex stalking the shadowed forests of late Cretaceous North America, its powerful legs moving with surprising silence. Ahead, grazing Edmontosaurus herds scattered at the first thunderous roar. A chase began, a final reflection of the predator-prey relationships that had shaped the land for millions of years. Some creatures watched from afar, Pachycephalosaurus, hiding behind trees, birds flying overhead, small mammals peeking from burrows, crocodilians waiting by riverbanks. These were the last witnesses to the T-Rex's terrifying but majestic way of life. Often forgotten in dinosaur documentaries, the mammals of the late Cretaceous were small, clever, and fast. They were rodent-sized insect eaters, burrowers, climbers, and opportunists. Species like Didelphodon, a carnivorous mammal powerful enough to crack bones, lived near rivers and forests. These mammals undoubtedly saw T-Rexes while scavenging around kill sites or darting between the feet of massive herbivores. These mammals were among the very last creatures to see a T-Rex, and unlike almost all dinosaurs, they survived. Their survival would eventually lead to us. Then came the day that changed everything. 66 million years ago, a 10 to 12 kilometers wide asteroid entered Earth's atmosphere. Traveling faster than a bullet, hotter than the sun's surface, it tore through the sky, leaving a glowing streak visible across half the planet. Creatures on the ground would have looked up in confusion, perhaps even fear, before a blinding flash lit the horizon. Birds panicked. Dinosaurs stopped in their tracks.
Turtles dove underwater.
Mammals fled into burrows. The asteroid slammed into what is now the Yucatan Peninsula with such power that it created a crater more than 150 kilometers wide. The shock wave traveled across continents. Forests ignited instantly. Tidal waves crashed across coastlines. Everything close to the impact died within seconds. But even far from the blast zone, the creatures that survived the initial shock now faced the true killer. The sky turned black. Ash and debris blocked sunlight for months. Plants died. Herbivores starved. Without herbivores, predators like the T-Rex had no food. The last T-Rexes were not killed by the asteroid directly. They starved. They weakened. Their ecosystems collapsed around them. The final creatures to see them were those still surviving in the fading world. Scavenging birds, burrowing mammals, small reptiles, crocodilians, insects feeding on the remains. These were the ones witnessing the last breaths of the apex predator that once ruled their land. It's still astonishing that while mighty creatures like T-Rex, Triceratops, and Quetzalcoatlus perished, smaller and more adaptable life forms endured. Heavy checkmark birds. Direct descendants of dinosaurs, they could eat anything, seeds, insects, carrion. Seeds buried underground remained edible even after the impact winter. Heavy checkmark mammals. Small, quick, and excellent at finding shelter. They could survive on insects, roots, and whatever scraps were left. Heavy checkmark crocodilians. Cold-blooded and aquatic. They needed very little food and could survive long periods without sunlight. Heavy checkmark turtles, amphibians, and some lizards. Many lived in mud, rivers, or burrows, shielding them from the worst effects. These survivors were the true last creatures to ever see a T-Rex alive, watching as one of Earth's most terrifying predators vanished forever. The extinction of the T-Rex wasn't just the death of a species, it was the end of an entire world. A world that had existed for millions of years. A world filled with giants. When the final T-Rex collapsed, hungry, exhausted, and doomed by forces far beyond its control, no creature understood the significance. No witness knew that it was the end of the dinosaurs. But the Earth did not stay empty. From the surviving mammals came primates. From primates came humans. And millions of years later, we became the storytellers of the T-Rex's final days. We are the ultimate witnesses, piecing together fossils, studying ancient landscapes, and reconstructing the moment when the age of dinosaurs came to an end. The last creatures to ever see a T-Rex alive were not the mighty giants that shared its world, but the small survivors that would inherit the Earth. Their endurance carried life through the darkest chapter in history, and because they lived, we can tell the story of how the greatest predator of all time met its final moment.